Hi, and welcome to The Green Elephant, the show that takes sustainability, climate change, social and environmental issues and eats them, one fact at a time. We're all about inspiring sustainable habits, so sit back, relax, have fun, and learn together with your hosts, Russell and Mike. This episode is brought to you by the fact that, on average, home workers could save £44.78 a week whilst working from home, and the fact that 22% of teleworkers say that switching off after work is their biggest challenge. And today's show is entitled Going Home When It Isn't Away From Work. How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, I'm really good, Russell. Good morning.
Morning.
So, we're working at home, I guess.
Yeah,
lots
like
of people.
millions of other people.
Yeah.
And how's it working for you?
It's a mixture of good and bad, I guess I'd say. There's some really good stuff about working from home, and there's some not so good stuff about working from home. But I guess
Yeah.
not a normal experience, is it, at the moment?
No, well, I must admit I've quite enjoyed it, but I'm one of those people who's looking out of the window, going, "Oh, this traffic on the road.
Oh dear.
Don't fancy rejoining it and travelling to the office. That's for sure."
No, indeed. So maybe we should dive in and talk about some of the good bits about working from home. So, I mean, what have you enjoyed most about it?
Well, I mean, I save money. I mean, petrol. Wow, I don't have a long journey to work. We're very lucky to work about, I'm lucky enough to work about 15 minutes away from where I live. So, and the drive's fairly easy. There's, the worst traffic I might get is if the barriers come down on the railway. But it's good to save money. And in my case, I can set myself up in a separate space. You wouldn't like it. There's no light. I
No,
work in a cellar,
I need
but from
daylight.
it, I have no distraction. I have no distraction at all.
Yeah,
Sarah
and
comes
I
down
guess
and says, "Oh, it's pouring with rain." I go, "Is it?"
yeah, I guess as well as the kind of money saving, there's another fact, which is that daily global fossil CO2 emissions fell by 17% in April 2020 compared with
Yeah,
2019. So it's not just money that's saved. There's other benefits. Um, I guess for me, it's the flexibility, and I guess we have different working approaches,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
guess the standard 9 to 5 office life doesn't necessarily cater for those that, like myself, I function better at 6 a.m. than I do at 6 p.m. And working from home gives you the flexibility to do what you do best at the time that suits you, rather than necessarily stick in the office until 5 o'clock, or that post-lunch graveyard period where
yeah.
energy is a bit lacking. So I guess there are all sorts of benefits to it.
And the flexibility has been great. I mean, we're fortunate again to be able to operate quite flexibly ourselves anyway. But
Mm.
yeah, it doesn't tie you to a location, doesn't force you to do travel. Um, and we've seen the figures have shot up. I did have some other facts because we do love our facts.
Indeed.
At the beginning of 2019, about 8.7 million people said they worked from home, and that includes people that start
Wow.
work at home and then go do a visit, and that's grown massively. That's doubled
Yeah.
in 10 years. But of course, this event has caused this massive exodus from the workplace, and obviously a lot of people become very familiar. Oh, probably another upside is become very
Mm.
familiar with this technology, the Teams, the Zooms, whereas people fought not to be seen on camera and they wouldn't do it. Now, oh yeah, bung it on and go onto a networking event with 200 people on it.
Yeah.
It's
And I
become,
guess there's positives in that, whereas at one stage, I mean, I've been working from home on and off since the late 1990s in various guises, and
You so old.
uh, I know, and at some point, there was a stigma attached to working from home, which was around you're slacking off, you're
Oh yeah,
not working as hard as we are,
flexible
and
working.
you're not visible, therefore. And I think there's an amount of research that shows that people are even more productive when they're at home. Um,
Yeah, and
but
whether some of the managers are though, I mean, there's one of the downsides. Some of the managers
yeah,
kind of do management by walking about.
and I
Um,
think that the research that says people are productive on the flip side says that they don't progress in their careers as quickly if they're working from home because they're not visible in the office. So, I mean, maybe it's time to talk about some of the downsides, because there are some definite downsides to being based at home.
yeah, and yeah, there's an element of focus. You can get distracted. You if you get a little bit of a stagnant point in the day's work, and you kind of go, oh, I'll just go clean the house from top to bottom, and all of a sudden you come back and go, or I'll mow the lawn, or I'll, if you've got one, um,
Yeah,
or I'll go do something, take my mind off, and all of a sudden 4 hours later you kind of go, oh crumbs, oh well, it's 5 o'clock, I won't get back to it now.
yeah.
And so focus can be
It requires discipline, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does, yeah.
indeed.
And
Um,
going back to the stat, of course, is that how do you, if I mean, some people have to work on their kitchen tables,
mm,
and perhaps set themselves up with a desk if they're lucky enough in their bedrooms, but then you never get away from it.
yeah,
You never,
yeah.
it's always there.
Then you,
And
you
so,
you can't switch off, and it's so easy just to say, oh, I'll just do 5 minutes, and that turns into another hour. And yeah, making
and
those distinctions is more difficult.
and that could cause, problems if you got a partner who says, oh, he's back at work, or he's always mine's not on the job, or her and mine's not on the job because they're tapping away. And then there was the other side, of course, is that we may have pushed a whole stack of people at home who relied on work as their social.
Yeah, yeah,
And the people that live alone, there was another fact that came out: nearly 31% of workers say that they struggle with loneliness when working remotely.
yeah. And in fact, another fact: half of those working from home during lockdown are unhappy with work-life balance. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
and people will, if they're lonely and they've got nothing else to do, perhaps turn themselves back to work. All of a sudden, find themselves doing 16 hours
yeah, yeah.
and not standing up or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's also a cost consideration. Why, whilst you're saving money, not traveling to and from work, and potentially organisations are saving money in travel and subsistence expenses, those costs, which were borne by the organisations, are being transferred to individuals. So, you have to pay for the power of your screens and laptops and whatever else when you're working at home, and for power and light whilst you're working at home. And those costs now are down to the individual and not to the organisation they work for. So,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a financial downside to the working at home situation.
Uh, and although, and probably one of the other downsides you mentioned earlier, that we've had this massive carbon reduction fell
Mm,
off the edge because the factories shut down, and people stopped driving. Although driving doesn't have as big an impact as turning electric off, that has been nothing more than a blip. All
mm,
said and done, lockdown releases, it shoots straight back up to where we were before. We start burning coal in our power stations again. There
yeah,
is there is no drop. And I think one of the facts I saw was that, on average, we're increasing our carbon emissions 1% a year, every year. Um,
yeah.
and
And that,
what we've seen here is this large drop of up to 14% of carbon emissions in a 4-month period.
yeah,
But the actual net effect in the year will be a -4. So basically, we're giving ourselves 4 years grace, but then we'll start burning through that quite quickly.
yeah.
So
But
the,
that
the,
that
the
needs to be,
carbon the carbon
yeah.
benefits aren't significant enough.
Yeah, it needs to be a launch pad rather than using it as a 4 years of grace. It needs to be, okay, we've done 4%. Now, what can we do to make that even better next year? But
Yeah.
we'll see whether that comes to pass or not, and that's I guess another conversation. So I guess really what we're saying is there's good and bad, but there's a balance to be struck. And if we look at uh, people, planet, prosperity, those kind of triple bottom line things, there's as we've discussed with the money, you might be saving money by not
Yeah.
traveling and buying expensive lunches, but your employer is also saving money by not funding certain travel and subsistence that it might have been. So where does the balance lie? And there's a responsibility between organization and person to ensure that the benefits of home working are felt by everybody and not just
Yeah.
by one side. um,
And I don't think we haven't mentioned it yet, but an organisation has responsibilities. When you're working in their premises, they have to care for your health and safety. And when you're present
Absolutely.
in the building, it's far perhaps easier to see if you're struggling with your workload, or if you're going a bit nuts on the side due to for whatever reason. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen you. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah,
And you can perhaps get, if things aren't right at home, perhaps some people can suffer dreadfully at work, and work might be um, the go-to place because they escape the home life,
yeah,
or whatever else. Now, if you find somebody's working 14 hours, this could be completely obscured from a from a manager. But at the same time, just because people are working from home doesn't stop the organization have a responsibility taking care for them. They have a duty of care for those
absolutely.
people, and
Yep.
and and that balance of where they're saving money on this side, not running premises, they might cut their power costs. I've heard of many organizations that now are reviewing what properties they need. Okay,
Absolutely.
we'll
Yeah, I've
we'll
heard
keep
lots
every
of that. Yeah.
we'll keep our local council have stepped up their
Mm.
potential asset disposal plans to lose a lot more buildings.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Property prices drop, prosperity might
Yeah.
be good for some people, might be good for the environment,
Mm.
but then you've got your people who are sitting at home when they didn't really want to work from home, and they now have no social. And
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
business doesn't invest really cleverly
Mm.
on doing something a bit different towards those,
Yeah.
because
But it comes down to the sort of that duty of care in the working environment.
yeah,
Organizations have a responsibility to provide, proper seating, proper audio, visual equipment to make sure that, eyes and ears are functioning and not
yes,
not strained by the working environments. There's a lot of organizations need to do. Um, but yeah, again, it's
it's
all
very
about
easy.
balance, isn't it?
It's very easy when people are a long way away to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, right, well, it's not my because they're not on my premises anymore." Well, no, actually, the mental health issue becomes
Mm.
way bigger, and they're going to have to come up with some really good stuff, some good balanced approaches
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that. So I think that there's this term, isn't there, the donut economy and
Circular
the
economy. Yeah.
that's it. There's a brain in there somewhere, but it's you shouldn't have got me up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do this, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
That circle where you have to look after the whole thing. It
Yeah.
goes around in a circle. We employ people. We look after the people so they're fit enough to look after the planet and do what they need to do to be able to be fit enough to carry on working for you. Everything
Mm.
has a cycle,
Yeah.
and so I
Yeah.
think how we strike, and again that whole balance where we pushing people to homework, or they embrace it because
Mm.
it's the
Well,
new thing they didn't realize they liked.
there's some education there, isn't there? Assuming
Yeah,
that people know how to work from home, that people know how to strike a balance, how to turn off the tech, how to, stop work at the right time when they've done enough for the day. There's sort of some sort of training involved, and that needs to be factored in. So, given that there is some training and some actions that people need to take, what about some suggestions for some takeaways from today? So, we've mentioned lots of facts pertaining to homework and the impact that it has on people in the environment. But what can we actually do to, suggest ways to help people?
Yeah. Well, one that and it that comes to mind immediately is people that work from home is establish good parameters for your workspace. Uh, if you're working on the kitchen table, which of course is not great for your back and can't be a long-term location, you need a proper chair. But you do need to look after yourself. But make sure you've got a space, and then, if necessary, pack it up and put it away at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Don't just leave it there staring at you all the way through the day. It's like a pile of unwashed clothing. It'll
Or dishes.
distract you. Your dishes, yeah. Get them done. Get the dishes done, but put your work away and set that demarcation. Say, look, I'm going to work this long in a day, or
Yeah.
this much in a week, or I've got this task to do, and depending on how you work in your head. But
Mm.
then set it, and then don't go, oh well, I'm not hungry yet, and I don't have to
Mm.
travel, so I do a little bit
So I
more.
think that's a good first step, isn't it? That demarcation, that
Yeah,
workspace, and be really interested if any of the listeners have got ideas or tips on how they get that balance and that
yeah,
demarcation, that space right. Then,
that'd be good.
you know, tell us on our social Green Pod. Let us know your tips, and it'll be great to hear them. But as far as a business is concerned, um, I guess the tips are make sure that you look after your people better. Just because they're not visible and in your office, you need to make sure that you're still taking care of them, um,
Yeah,
and that they might be more dispersed, but you need to stay in touch. You need to keep checking on them. You need to make sure they are well as continuing to do the
working.
work that you need them to do.
And I think that kind of then you got this awkward straddling group of people. So you got you got the organisations to employ people, and you got that duty of care, and they probably got health and safety nailed for premises, but haven't really thought about people working from home so much. You got the individual, but then in the middle you've got this bunch of, and there's a million of them at least in the UK, of small business owners that just work every hour that God sends anyway.
Yep.
um, and they need they've been used to a 12, 14, 16 hour working day, just doing their books at night, and they'll carry on doing that. And when you work from home and you're using from some home, you need to take some time, and you need to work out how you take a holiday, and how you perhaps even take something like a tech-free break. It might be
Yep.
just a half a day a week where you say, I'm not
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
pick my phone up. I'm going to put my phone in the drawer. I'm going to put my
Yeah.
pad in the drawer. I'm going to
I
put
mean,
my PC in the
uh,
locker, whatever.
that's a subject of another podcast. Just taking a day where you turn all the devices off, and I did one a few weeks ago, and it's amazing how there's that itch to check the phone and check messages and things. And yeah, that's maybe a subject of another discussion.
Absolutely. We'll note it down. I think there's a number of people that have been prominent. There's been other podcasts that I've seen where people have gone off tech altogether. A bit bizarre that they then talk about it on a podcast, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
how
There
did
we
you
are.
record this? But yeah, people who've got rid of their mobile.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you and
Well,
I both come from a generation where that's not. We didn't grow up with a mobile, so
no.
perhaps we should perhaps think of turning back to that on occasions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's lots to think about with regards to homeworking. We'd really like to know what the listeners think about homeworking. How has the experience been for you? What was good? What was bad? Um, but I think we've seen from the conversation we've just had that the homeworking is not the solution to all problems, but it is a good thing in many respects. Um, so it's
Yeah, it's not a panacea.
no,
All we can now. It's going to be huge. We already know there's going to be massive financial implications of this disaster, but
yeah, yeah,
uh, good grief. Um,
yeah,
but home working is not going to solve it. and it's not going to
No.
solve. It's definitely not going to solve the carbon issue,
No.
the increasing carbon emissions, if you believe that's a problem, as we've seen so much conversation on. But I think probably what this period of time has done is it's given us a taste of what perhaps needs to be done, just a taste of what kind of things need to be done to perhaps reduce our emissions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even by 3-4% a year. And the trouble is that may not be enough.
Yeah. So I think, homeworking is here to stay. Getting the right balance, switching off, making yourself comfortable, and continuing your social interactions are kind of key things to successful homeworking. And with that, I think it's probably time to end this episode. So thanks, Russell. Good to talk to you,
no problem at all. Yeah.
And
can I go back to sleep now?
If you like. And we'll talk again on other matters shortly.
Yep, we'll do. Thanks for listening to this edition of Green Elephant. It's been a pleasure to have your company. If you've got thoughts or comments on anything you've heard on the show, please drop us a line using studio@greenelephant.show. We love hearing your views and ideas. In the meantime, let's carry on the conversation. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube and Twitter as Green Ellie Pod. Come back soon.